Hello, this is Jared from Commit Quality, and today we're going to go over VS Code setup for Windows, and then I'm going to give you an overview to get you started on your development journey. So, if you're on this video, you may already know what VS Code is. However, in simplest terms, it's a very lightweight yet powerful, free, open source code editor created by Microsoft. It should really do everything you need and more. Now, it is good to mention there are alternatives to VS Code. For example, you might have heard of Sublime Text or Atom. Now, you could just do a quick Google search for alternatives. However, personally, I prefer VS Code, and I think it's a good place to start. So, let's jump right into it. Open up Google and search for VS Code, and the top result you should see is the code.visualstudio.com website. I'm going to click on the download link. This is going to take you to a download page, and you can choose how to download Visual Studio Code and for what operating system. I'm doing it for Windows, so I'm going to click Windows, and then you'll see the download will happen for you. Once that is downloaded, you want to click on the executable file. I already have one downloaded, so I'm going to open that up now. And simply, you just want to click through a lot of this. So I'm just going to click through Next. I know the location, so click through Next. I don't want to create a Start menu folder, so I click Next. And on here, I personally like to check these two boxes, but by default they're unchecked. Now what this is going to do for you is it allows you to open files and folders directly via VS Code when right-clicking on them, and I can show you that a little bit later in this course. After that's done, I'm going to click Install. This might take a while, so we'll speed this up a little bit. Okay, great. So that's installed, and we're going to launch Visual Studio Code by clicking Finish. So with VS Code open, you can see a Get Started page is open. We're going to ignore that for now, and I'm going to take you through the kind of side tabs and what we can do and see with these and what they're all used for. So first of all, let's go through the Explorer. So you have the Open Editor, so you can see if I'm to add a new file, you can see when it's open, it shows in here, and as you have multiple files, it'll keep adding to the open editors. I'm actually going to create an index.html file and save that. So one thing I quickly want to touch on is the power that Visual Studio Code has out of the box, and it has some functionality called emit. And emit is a way of using short expressions to create things like HTML. So for example, I'm going to say exclamation mark, and you can see here emit abbreviation. If I click tab on this, what it's just done is it's generated me a HTML document, so I can quickly now start writing some HTML code. We'll come back to this in a little bit later on, but let's save that file for now. Also inside Explorer, you have the Folders tab. Now, of course, I haven't opened any folders yet, but if you were to open a folder from here or go into File, Open Folder, then you would see your full folder structure, and this is where you're going to spend most of your time navigating around your files, opening them up to edit them, that kind of stuff. Now also, there's a few others, Outline and Timeline. Outline is a really cool feature where whatever file you have open, it'll break it down for you, so you can click head, you can see what everything is, you can go directly to the line numbers here, so maybe you just want to go to the title of that, and it'll navigate you here, and it'll kind of bold the line number for you. It's a really cool feature. And then you also have a timeline, and this just shows you when you've saved a file, maybe updated it, when you created it. Now, if you don't think any of these are useful, or you don't see any of these, you can click the three dots at the top, and you can choose what you want to show. So I may not find timeline very useful, so I'll hide it, and if I want it back, I can just click it again, and that will come back for me. One thing to mention as well will be, as you install more things, extra tabs can appear in here. So when we have a npm project where we have a package.json file, you'll see npm scripts here, which will show you, what scripts you have to run, so you don't have to keep navigating back and forth between files. It's a really useful feature to add in. So the next tab on the side menu to talk about is the search feature. Now, this is really good when you want to search the full folder structure for specific items. Of course, you can do a search and replace as well, and this does come in very handy, especially if you're like me and you're constantly changing things. Now, moving on to the next tab, we have source control. Now, there's not really much to see here because I haven't downloaded Git for my machine yet. That'll come in a another video for you. Now, what you can do is you can open your Git repositories and you can clone repositories, and you'll have a nice UI interface built into VS Code to allow you to work with Git. Now, I personally prefer using command line for any of my Git work. However, please leave a comment if you would like to see more in-depth information on this kind of tab. I do plan on doing a Git series, so leave some comments to see if you think that's going to be beneficial for you. Moving on to the next one, again, there's not much to go here because we don't really have anything to run and debug, but this is what it says on the tin. It allows you to run your code and debug code, and in future videos you'll see me using this a little bit more. Now moving on to the last tab we can see on the sidebar, and this is extensions, and this is the fun part, and it's really easy to do. Extensions will make your coding, test automation, development life just a lot easier, and there's a lot to choose from as well. All you need to do is search for something you want, so I might search for Playwright, and then you can choose to install it, and it gives you some information about what the extension does and how it will make your life easier. Once you install, typically you'll be asked to reload Visual Studio Code, and then you're able to use the extension straight away. Now, I do plan on releasing future videos talking about some of my favorite extensions for test automation and even web development. And as I create more course content, I'll discuss extensions I personally use in my tutorial videos. Now, you may have already noticed as I've been hovering over these that everything has a shortcut as well. So you've got Control-Shift and E for Explorer, and you've got Control-Shift and G for the source control. Now that comes really handy when you want to navigate through things quickly. I can just use the shortcuts and move to whatever I want on this, and this really does save time. Shortcuts are fantastic. The next thing to touch on is settings. Now, to open up settings in Visual Studio Code, you can go to the cog icon down here and click on Settings, or Control+ as the shortcut. Now inside settings, you can change basically everything you really would want to change. So you might want to increase your font size or change the font family. You can do all that inside. I did also touch on the color theme and also file icon themes. So you can see for file icon theme, by default it's set to SETI, which is the default for Visual Studio Code. But what you can do is click on file icon theme. Now you can install additional themes, which you could really get lost in a rabbit hole going into this, or you can choose to disable them. Now here you can see they're gone, so I'm just going to go back and put that back to SETI. And we touched on color theme, so if you click on color theme, you can see here you can change to whatever you want. I personally prefer dark plus, however you might prefer the light plus. Another thing I want to touch on is user snippets. And user snippets is a way of creating some commonly reused code, and you can use it as a snippet so it can be easily brought into your development files. It's worth noting there are extensions that bring in a lot of snippets and things for you, and things like Emmet and IntelliSense. You might not need it that much. This is for common code that you personally might prefer or write, and you think it's good to bring in. Another major tool that VS Code has built in is something called the command palette. And to get to command palette, you can go via the cog icon, or the shortcut is Control-Shift and P, or another way is go to View and open command palette. Now, command palette basically allows you to do everything you want to do via commands in Visual Studio Code. So for example, I might want to open up a JavaScript debug terminal. So I could search for JavaScript, and here you can see it. And if I click on this, below, you can see the terminal has now been opened. And if I had some JavaScript files, I could start debugging them. Now, we talked about the terminal, and at the start of the video, I said you really shouldn't need to switch out to VS Code to do anything. It should do everything you want. So you can click the plus icon here and open up terminals inside here. So if you want to run Git commands, you can open up the Git terminal, which of course I don't have Git installed, so it hasn't appeared. However, when you install Git for Windows, it would appear here, and you can run the Git commands and you can do whatever you want with that, all inside Visual Studio Code. One last thing I wanted to show you inside Visual Studio Code was what we briefly discussed, the Emmet functionality and even IntelliSense. So say I wanted to add a header 1 to my web page. All I have to do is type H1 and click Tab, and that's going to fill out everything I need for my H1. So I can say Hello World in here. Now also, it has smart IntelliSense as well, so if I wanted to write the tag h1, as soon as I close off this bracket, you can see it's auto-completed what I need. So it's trying to help us by saying, look, I know what you want to close it off, and I'm trying to solve any problems you don't need. It's really useful, and as you watch more of my course tutorial and masterclass videos, you're going to see how beneficial this really is and how it speeds up your development cycle. When we went through setup, we also talked about installing the Open with Code option. And what that allows us to do is if you right click on a file or folder, you can open with code, and that will open it in a new Visual Studio Code window for you. A little bonus information for you as well. If you're someone who likes to navigate through your folders via command line, you can actually open Visual Studio Code. So I'm going to say CMD here, and that will open up a command line for me. Now, I might want to say, okay, I just want to open up VsCode. If I type in code and enter, what's going to happen is Visual Studio Code is going to open for us, and we can go through the whole process that we talked about again. And that's it. I hope this has helped you with setting up VsCode and give you an overview of how you can start your development journey. Now, if there are any future VsCode topics you would like to know about, please comment below. And thank you for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.